Hello, I'm Odin, and today I'm going to make another Marvel prop. It's War Machine's Mark IV helmet as seen in Avengers Infinity War. I made a set of patterns based off of a Pepakura file. This is actually the second set that I've printed out. I've cut these out once before to make a tester helmet, make sure it fits, and that all the pieces are actually going to cut out of foam in a way that makes sense to me. So I modified those that I think I needed to change, and I'm good to go. I used Armorsmith Designer to scale the helmet to fit my head and to alter one of the pieces for better symmetry. I traced my pattern pieces onto a sheet of 6mm HD foam. And when I cut them from the large sheet, I cut between the lines on each part, not on the line that I traced, because I plan to use my bandsaw to cut each piece right on that line. Now this is really helpful when I have two parts to cut and I can do both at the same time, and the edges are all 90 degrees. Not all of the parts went right to the bandsaw. Some of them needed a groove cut into the back for a crease with a peak, like on the cheeks. I have a number 125 high-speed cutter bit in my Dremel, and I have the router base attachment. This cuts a V groove into the foam easily, and I set the depth of the cut to be about 5mm. This allows me to make a peak crease in the foam without a full seam, and I think it looks much cleaner.
Yep, that's what I want. Nice straight lines.
Making the V groove before I cut parts in the bandsaw is nice because the extra foam supports the Dremel and the V grooves are consistent all the way to the edges of the piece that I want. For some of the parts, particularly the chin, I tilt the table on the bandsaw and cut each piece on an angle. These angled cuts will glue together and keep the seam on the corner. By the way, the blade I'm using on the saw is called a scalloped blade. It looks more like a bread knife. It's not the toothed saw blades I typically see. This blade is made for foam and other soft materials, and it leaves a very smooth cut on the edge with very little sawdust. So I've got all my parts cut out. I need to do some more details and then I can start gluing. I need to add more V grooves to the side of the head. And cutting my original pattern is nice for getting the lines onto my foam parts. The left and the right side will match, even when there is two lines on each part. The Dremel base doesn't have as much support now that the parts are cut out. I really have to be mindful of the start and end of each cut. If I tip the Dremel, I might cut through the front of the foam. Also, with this curved line, I'm not using a ruler and fighting the rotational pull of the Dremel, so close enough is just fine. This piece makes the jaw, and I cut open the cheek holes. And then I score a line along the lower part of the jaw, because at this part, it's half silver and half camouflage. And a heat gun opens up that light cut line, making a good separation or panel line. There are panel lines on the face as well, and I cut a pattern for equal placement. But the lines are wider than the one in the jaw, so I'm using a wood burner with a chisel tip to burn the wide line in place. There are a few more V grooves to cut and some small parts to remake, and then I can start gluing. I use a small brush to apply contact cement inside each of the V grooves and not just on the face, but on all the parts that have them. When the contact cement is dry, I can fold the grooves closed and create a peak on the other side of the foam, and because there's no cut, it looks really clean.
Yep, that's what I want. Okay, and then this piece needs to go here.
That small piece is an extra strip of 4mm foam. I need to add a few of these in different thicknesses. As many of the panels on the helmet don't glue together at the same elevation, these extra strips on both sides really help.
I'll make the face a little stiffer on the sides, but the big thing it's going to do is let me have these stick out further. Alrighty.
Now typically with my builds, I'm making my pattern as I go, so it's really nice having all of the pieces ready from the start. I can just glue the parts and put it together. And the sides of the head are interesting. They just glue onto the temple plates. I start in the front on both plates because the back of each side of the skull has the same problem, that the curved piece that goes around the top is just, it's almost a centimeter too long. This is what, maybe 6-8 mil. So I'm gonna have to actually trim that back, but I don't know where yet until I get this on. So I'm working on all that. The brows stick out further than, well, any other panel. It's interesting putting this thing together. The top of the head fits between the sides of the head. Now, I typically don't build for the face first, but that made the most sense with this helmet, and this is turning out to be a pretty interesting build. I decided to try heating the top of the head with my heat gun and curving it over my planishing stake. Now, this is probably not needed, but I wanted to give it a shot anyway.
Alrighty. Now I just gotta glue these parts back together. And it's okay if it ends up being short because I gotta trim this anyway.
When I make my patterns, I add registration marks so I know the pieces are all lining up while they're being glued together. But this pattern doesn't have them, so I gotta be careful not to pull either side and warp the head. So why do I feel like I'm putting the peel back onto a banana? With the top of the head together, I can trim off the extra that's on the back.
Cool. Left, this is the left side. So this piece is supposed to match up the bottom of the jaw, and then it kind of sets in to this piece in a way. I trim the parts to fit and glue the ears on. The ears are cut from 10mm foam because they stick out a bit. I apply the first back of the head layer. It's hard to see, but I added some 2mm strips on the inside for the panel offset. Next, I attach the jaw. The back of the jaw is flush with the head, but the cheeks stick out and then slope back down to the mouth where it's flush again. No, it won't. I am gonna have to make some sort of opening for it. All right, that's a bummer. Well, come on, almost. Wow, that fits. I mean, you know, fits in a Man in the Iron Mask, Dr. Doom, you're never taking it off kind of way, but all right. I glue in the last panel. This is it. This is all the big pieces from the pattern. And I'm thinking about cutting it open in the back along those panel lines that I created. That might be enough to get it over my head after it's painted. I push a couple of strips of 4mm foam into the holes that are on the forehead, and then I can glue some 2mm strips behind them to hold them in place. I want to flatten some of these seams because most of the angle cuts, they don't lay flat, so I just want to grind them down. I also grind the edges and the side of the head. This sharpens the corners and it looks much better. I have a brand new can of contact cement, and it's really thin when it's new, so I paint a coat of cement over the entire helmet. The thin cement dries very quickly and flat. It'll also seal the foam. I let it sit for a couple of hours before I coat it with black Plasti Dip. And after a couple of coats, it's ready for paint. I asked Joe to airbrush the whole thing. My skill and patience for using an airbrush is very little. It takes a few coats to get the face good and silver. Then we let the silver dry and mask it all off and reapply the back of the head with the base black color. Joe had set up a digital camo art file and used a vinyl cutter to make blue tape paint masks for the digital camo pattern. Now, this took some time to do, getting it all set up and applied, but it made the most sense as a way to get the camo pattern onto the helmet. This process is a lot of time to get set up, but the application is quick, and the airbrush sprays on so thin, it dries very quickly. The masks are all one-time use, but they're very effective. We have another set ready for the next lighter color layer. Apply the final layer of masking and spray on the lightest color of the camo. By the way, Joe is airbrushing with PlaidFX acrylics paints. Now, Plaid told me that they work in the airbrush when mixed with a window cleaner of all things. It's about a 50-50 mix of paint to cleaner. And it does seem to work really well. I think I'll ask Joe to paint stuff again. The open holes in the cheeks are filled with a thin layer of black craft foam with a small frame and a detail insert. With just a little bit of dry brushing over the black foam, they get glued in place. I have a small piece of privacy window screen that I want to use to fill the mouth, but it'll also still let me breathe. And for the eyes, I scribed a series of lines into some edge light acrylic plastic. Now, this type of plastic refracts light and makes all of the edges glow. We vinyl cut a set of eye frames to hide the sides of the LEDs from my eyes, and I'll also frame in the lenses as well.
Light from the LEDs will shine out the scratches, but I can still mostly see through the clear plastic. And making a place for the battery is going to be a little tougher because there's not much room in there. Most of the materials I used are available for order and have shipped right to you. I put a list in the description.
And I got the helmet to fit. What I ended up doing is the panel line that I had created in the back of the wood burner, I actually cut that open and then glued in a couple of strips of elastic. Now the back of the helmet stretches enough, I can get it to fit over my head. And I really want to say thank you very much to Joe, because he helped a lot with getting the camouflage painting, and he did a lot with getting the eyes to light up. And let me tell you, yes, I can see with these eyes. I can see out this very well, actually. This isn't that bad. I'm surprised at how well this works. The battery is right up against my forehead, but that actually made the helmet self-contained. If I got a smaller rechargeable battery, it would be a lot better. But for right now, this works. And this is pretty cool. I'm pretty excited about having a War Machine helmet, and I'm really happy with how it looks. And if you want to give it a shot, you can. All the pattern pieces that I made, all the vinyl cutting templates that we created, all those will be in the description. Those are a free download. You can give it a shot for yourself if you'd like. I built mine out of foam because you know this is how Odin makes.
Feel like a bionicle. It's really nice when it's flipping hot because the glue dries a lot faster. But you know what I don't like when it's flipping hot? Yeah, it's hot.
I want to thank Luca Negro, Stephen Mowbray, and all of my Patreon supporters. My Patreon support is the #1 thing that makes this show possible. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe. Have an idea for something for me to make? Please leave a comment below. And if you make any of these projects, you can send me a picture.